packet, you received information on the number of arrests that were reported and handled by the Torrington courts. When you take a look, that first number of 91 was the total number, and interesting enough, Mr. Nargi, that we are being asked by courts to provide and restructure our whole intervention process so that fewer children make it to the courts. So I just want to add that. So 91 students, 57 male, 34 females. As you can see, the age of referral was anywhere from under the age of 12 to 16. Ethnicity, a broad stroke of all ethnic areas. Prior referrals, anywhere from 0. So 40 of the 91 never had a referral before that. And this is all that have gone to the courts in Torrington. However, in the next area, you look at how many students came from Torrington, and that included Torrington High School, Oliver Wolcott Technical School. It could be the Christian Academy because they have a high school, so we don't know specifically, but it was 50 from Torrington, and of those 50, 37 came from Torrington High School and Torrington Middle School. So when you take a look at that, they say it's 40% of all students who were arrested and brought before the court. But when you look at that 37, and you look at, it includes both Torrington High School and Torrington Middle School, which would give us a population of over 2,200, it's like 1.6%. So I just would like to point that out. And in the last piece, when you take a look at, breach of peace, disorderly conduct, drug paraphernalia, assault, those are the types of things that students were arrested for. And it doesn't necessarily mean that all the arrests too, of those 37 arrests, they did not necessarily occur at the high school or at the middle school, but they happen to students who are attending that school. However, I want you to be aware that Creedon has been working with the LIST, the Local Interagency Service Team, and they really want to, they're really working on ways to improve our adult-student interactions. We're creating the student success profiles. We're looking at the way the tier system is and the response to intervention. We've also been working on a behavior program that began at the middle school and is working its way this year into 9th grade. Also the 9th grade academy, and also training staff and faculty on how to de-escalate students' behavior before it gets to a point of where we need to have the SRO officer intervene. I met with the police chief yesterday. There's another meeting on the 22nd, because what we want to be able to do is have everyone, faculty, SRO officer, staff, administration, all respond in the same way, because if you respond in a certain way, you develop consistency and continuity across your school. You're really working to make students responsible for their behaviors, and as you move along, you will reduce, it'll take 2 to 3 years, but you will reduce the numbers of altercations, interactions, or intervention by the police.
And those are changes that are changes in our interventions are a result of state courts asking us to change the way we.
No, this is Joanne's been working for the past 2 years, and this will be the 3rd year on changing the school climate and culture. She shared with us earlier this year a book that she had all faculty read. It was part of their discussion at faculty meetings. We did training last year for all principals and social workers, and in fact it was led by one of our social workers on how do you de-escalate student behavior.
So will we make, or have we made any changes in response to what the courts have asked us to do? I'm thinking of unfunded mandates, as we were just told.
No, this was
state,
there. there's a
Once
good,
school begins, we can't. Unfortunately, did that just happen?
what,
The
the
court
list,
No, the court asked us to
within the
reduce.
past 3 or 4 months. We met, what, in May, Joanne, and then you met again in the end of June or July, and then you're meeting August 22nd. So it's ongoing, it's really trying to develop a collaborative.
The question was when the court asked,
Oh, no,
Us
we
to
were already in
reduce.
the process.
well, when did they ask us to reduce the number of referrals? And have we done anything since then?
I think, can I just
Sure.
pipe up with, the first conversation, oh, you have to acknowledge me or something?
No, no,
Okay.
well, hi.
The first conversation that we had with Keith Blanchard from the judicial office was in the fall of last year, indicating that the number of THS or school-based arrests, school-age arrests were high, and we've had ongoing conversations about what are it's multifaceted approaches to working with student behaviors. And so, I mean, it wasn't a knee-jerk, okay, you've got to arrest less, therefore this. It's really part of what we're trying to do to change student behaviors in the first place and to get to some of the root causes. I'm sure we will continue to have some arrests.
Okay, but it's not gonna cost us any more money just because the courts have told us it's things we were doing anyway, want to do it.
Oh, yes, yes. In fact, the SRO officer is paid through the police department. The training, we had one social worker trained, and she has been training everyone else in the de-escalation. The behavior piece is something that all teachers will be trained in. It is, and we're doing it in-house, no expense.
Is this information broken down by ethnicity because of state reporting requirements?
Okay. Number 3. Oh. Okay, good.
Jessica.
I'm sorry, I was following my phone. I'm trying to follow because I misheard something. The 91 students in the year, that was students that were going to our schools, that didn't happen at the school. How many happened in our schools?
I don't know how many happened in our school, but we had 37 between, 37 students attending Torrington High School or TMS were arrested. It did not necessarily happen in our schools. Sometimes it happens on the weekends, but they count them as Torrington High School.
Okay, but what was the 91 though?
That was all students, the court, that was 91.
This is a court form that we received
Okay.
from them. This is the Litchfield,
It's the Torrington, what they consider Torrington.
the Torrington area court. So the
Okay.
91 could be Oliver Wolcott,
I gotcha.
could
But
be
Yeah.
Christian
37 was
Academy,
ours.
could be, 37 was our direct high school and middle school students.
I'm curious how the administration feels about the SRO. I mean, how many assistant principals do we have at the high school? And we have a principal there, and we have trained staff and social work in that office as well. These are the authoritarians in the situation. I mean, when you see 37 students being arrested, I mean, it draws alarm.
They could have drugs on them, and that constitutes an arrest. It could have started as a disagreement, verbal disagreement, moved into shoving and pushing, became physical. That may constitute an arrest, depending on how fast you can just de-escalate when they get upset.
But those have always been arrests, before there were SROs.
Right, but it's, I don't know, maybe this sounds old I am, but it's amazing that things what teenagers got away with 30, 20, even 10 years ago, you can't get away with it now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that makes it, there's more chance. In the past, it would be, your father's gonna get a call, and you feared that more than you feared if you were arrested, I think. Kids just cannot do the stupid things that kids will do.
Yeah, there's definitely been a change, there's just been social change, but, the biggest thing that I'm worried about is that if we have an SRO there, it'd be a little bit more convenient for administration to have a student arrested as opposed to deal with it. If it's an old-fashioned way, whatever it is, but calling the parent or calling the police department from the school. I don't know if that's what's happening. I'm not saying that's happening, but when there's such a high number of arrests that are taking place, that would just be a concern of mine.
We can't deal with things, Vince, the way we used to be able to. We used to be able to handle things in-house that now you can't because of zero tolerance programs and because of legal requirements and so on. You know, it used to be we had more authority back then. Now it's just law enforcement.
I mean, we can monitor that. And like I said, there are also students who attend school but were arrested outside of school, and for whatever reason, it was then brought back into, not brought back into the school, but the kids returned from Hartford detention, and,
THS average daily attendance for 2010, 11, and 12.
We had a concern expressed at a previous meeting that there was a spike in the attendance or absentee rate during the last 2 months of the school year, this year compared to last year, possibly fueled by the discussions that were occurring around the attendance policy and questions and ambivalence around some of the attendance policy practices. So we've pulled the data from the data dashboard, which is on the district's website. And you'll notice that this year's May and June absentee rate or attendance rate is very similar to what it was last year, but certainly the last 2 years represent a drop from the previous year. Just to mention that anything over 10% is a concern, because generally you want to be in the 90-degree range for attendance. But the concern that there was a big drop off this year as a result of the policy, I think, is unwarranted. Because we are concerned about this level of attendance, there are a number of interventions that are in place. We started 2 years ago the revision of the attendance policy, having the policy revised and approved and rolled out. A new attendance review board was implemented, activated, that was very active over the course of the last year. The Torrington Public Schools, specifically the high school, but all of the schools have been working, I think, much more closely with social service agencies to address the chronic issues. And there are specific staff at the high school, such as the dropout prevention specialist and the social workers who have been working, focusing on individual student attendance problems. In addition to these ongoing efforts, there are other things that are going on. You all know that the policy has been under review and will be aligned with the new state regulations and guidance regarding record keeping for excused and unexcused absences. We're working to clarify the absence reporting and parent responsibilities for documenting absences and providing training and support as needed for staff to assure that absences are accurately reported, corrections to errors and changes in status are done promptly, so the students who are actually present get credit for being present and are not counted as absent. So the question we've answered with the data, and it does continue to be a concern for us, and these are the things that we're doing to try to address it.
When looking at this data, it answers one of my concerns, which was, did May and June, were they adversely affected by what the board quasi did back then to address some of the concerns that the administration and some parents had as far as excused, unexcused, and what you had to do to get that together? And you see there was no drastic change from 11 to 12, but you do see it, you know, you're talking about over a 10% or a 10% attendance decline from the year 2010 to the next 2 years, from 93 to 86, 96 to 90. That's approximately a 10% drop off for the next 2 years. First question is, what were we doing right, so-called, in 2010, and what was it the adoption of our attendance policy that somehow, because that's when it took effect, all of a sudden, we changed our attendance policy. Instead of having better attendance, for some reason, we had 2 years of declining attendance. The second, that's my observation on the data, but I also have a question.
Do you want me to respond?
Sure, yes.
This is just the last 2 months of the year,
Right.
which are actually the lowest rates of attendance, I think, for any time during the year. Typically, our high school attendance rate is in the 92 to 94% range all the other months of the year. So I think that the issue has as much to do with the time of the year and the opportunities for other activities that students may elect to engage in other than attending school in the waning months when they're approaching graduation or their status for the upcoming year is more clear to them, that also is having an impact on those numbers being lower. And if you look at the year as a whole, all 10 months, you'll find that probably the overall average is in the mid-90s for the other months as opposed to these lower numbers that you see at the end of the year when students feel that they're somewhat powerless about changing their fate. So why bother come to school at all?
Well, I think if I remember looking at the data correctly, you also see similar drop-offs in faculty attendance. You see,
For different reasons,
well,
perhaps.
whatever, they seem to miss more days in May and June, similar to the students. My question on the attendance, though, is when you see this, whatever the percentage is, say 86 or 90% in May and June of 2012, that's just cold attendance, meaning it's not days that are excused and non-excused. We're just looking
That's
at
correct.
pure attendance. So maybe some of these days may have been more excused, not excused, but
Big thing with seniors is returning to decide how much school they want,
okay.
and final visits and.
Could be sporting events, it could be field trips, it could be.
Right.
Ellen
It
would like that.
it also could be in 2010 versus 11 and 12, the accuracy. It could be that in 2010, there wasn't the same accuracy, and it was more honed in on.
Right. We changed the entire administration, school and
Right.
Midget Avenue in that
So-
same time period, so it could be the way it was done.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any part of our funding from the state still rely on attendance? It used to be very important, the ADM, average daily membership.
No, we record it, we send it to the state, but it's,
No,
what
it
we
used to
really
be-
follow closer, and it's usually about 94% from the district. What we follow more closely now is our chronic absenteeisms and how that impacts those who fail or drop out.
The superintendent's report.
Yeah, you run into number 4?
Oh, did I skip it?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez, I'm in a hurry, sorry. Number 4, Odyssey Way.
I'll try to be brief with this one as well. There was a request to look into online learning systems that are being used in other districts around the state. The list that I've attached, the spreadsheet is by no means complete, but it does represent a sample of district that I was able to confirm within the last 3 weeks. You'll note that there are a number of districts that have also elected to implement OdysseyWare, which is the online learning vendor that we have used for credit recovery and on our summer school program. In this list, I've also included the district reference group for each of the districts along with the products that they use to give you an idea that, in fact, OdysseyWare is used in the whole range of districts from the wealthiest, the A's and B's, all the way down to the G, H's and I's. So it doesn't seem to be dependent on a specific demographic profile in terms of the selection of the product. What you may notice is that there are a large number of districts listed as VHS, that's Virtual High School, as is mentioned in the memo. Virtual High School and Virtual Learning Academy were 2 online learning vendors that got their toehold in the state some years ago through Learn and CREC, two other education consortiums. And so they were sort of the first arrivers on the scene, and many districts who were anxious to look for alternative programming did sign on with them, many more so with Virtual High School than Virtual Learning Academy. They have a very different structure. In order to participate, you have one member of your staff trained to be a virtual high school instructor, and in exchange for that, you get 25 free seats for students to take a single class. And it is primarily an online program, not as much a blended learning program as the one that we've chosen to implement. So, you know, as we've seen is the case with the online learning programs, it's a very complicated and growing field. There are lots of different purposes for online learning, pricing models and staffing models, and yet, in spite of that, we see that there are a number of other districts that have elected to use the same vendor that we have used and are happy with them, and then other districts that have made other choices. So I hope this satisfies your request for this information.
I have a question. Of these that are using these different programs, is this their first year in the program? Have they been using it for several years?
I have that information, and I could have added that in the last column if I'd known that you were interested in that. Some of them have been using VHS for as long as 8 to 9 years. Some of the OdysseyWare users have been on as long as 5 to 7 years. I think Michael Swain, our representative, has indicated a couple of the districts, and some are more newcomers. I know Meriden and Manchester signed on with OdysseyWare several years ago and have several years under their belt. And then some are newcomers to the field, just starting with it, or have them under consideration.
I don't see, you know, the Avons, the Glastonburys, the Greenwiches in this list, and for whatever reason, I don't know what that is. Is it they're doing it, have they been doing it in-house? They don't buy these programs? Or is it that they're behind because they're academically so ahead and they're not going in this direction? I'm just...
No, they're not included on here because I wasn't able to confirm them. For example, the town in which I live is not represented on here, and yet I know that they've participated in virtual high school for the last 6 or 7 years as an option. This list also does not include other vendors that we've used for specific purposes. For example, at Torrington High School, in addition to OdysseyWare, we've taken advantage of Connecticut Virtual Learning, University of Missouri, Keystone, and other products to solve particular problems for particular courses for particular students. They haven't been broad-based district-wide implementations, whereas the ones that are reflected on here reflect a commitment by the district to invest in a product for a purpose such as credit recovery or enhancing their course offerings because they can't offer a course or something like that.
Are the state schools, yeah, the state schools, are they doing much with online learning? Are they doing it in-house?
I don't know what they're doing at the technical or vocational agricultural schools. I didn't have anyone from the technical high school system respond to my inquiry. There are a couple of schools, I believe, and I'm not sure whether they mentioned it here, Madison and possibly Monroe, that we're talking about developing some of their own products. But that's a very labor-intensive process, and you have to be willing to work with your union to decide what the balance is going to be between their teaching assignment and their duties that would be related to online learning, product development, and implementation.
I just would wonder what the state's intent for the future is of online learning, what money invested that they're going in that direction, and then will we get the fruits of their labor sooner than?
No, I don't believe so. I mean, there is a Connecticut virtual learning system that's available for districts in the state of Connecticut, but it's not the same as Florida virtual learning or Michigan virtual learning, where they're actually owned by the state education agency and offered as part of programming for any of the schools within that jurisdiction. So the state hasn't taken that route.
The superintendent's report. I'd like to, when we did the amending of the agenda, we overlooked one item that we wanted to add. I'd like to know if I could get a motion from the floor to add an item D under number 5, an alternative energy option review.
So moved.
Second by, any discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, we're just going to add that as D, alternative energy option. The floor is yours.
We're doing it first, or we doing it, if we're doing it D, we got A for.
I just said the floor is yours.
No,
It's
it's
superintendent
Sue's
report,
still.
so go
Yeah,
ahead.
but it's still Sue's. Go ahead.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, there's a sheet in your packet that's called My College Options Superintendent Report. My College Options is an independent college placement service that works in cooperation with school districts to provide free college planning services to students. And it involves having our school counselors work with students as part of their college and career planning to fill out interest inventories and so on. And then My College Options creates these summary sheets and then also helps to connect students with colleges or universities that they feel closely match the students' interests. So it's a kind of a mutually beneficial arrangement at no cost to the district. What they get out of it is they're able to provide names of students to a variety of different colleges, and those colleges can then contact and recruit, so to speak, students to attend their programs. If you look on the back of the sheet, there is a partial listing of the schools that may have contacted students at Torrington High School because of the My College Options program. At the end of the year, they provide us with the summary sheet, which gives us information about the career and major interests of our students, their future planning needs, their military plans, whether they are first generation college bound, some of the high school courses that they've taken, the type of college environment they wish to attend, and the college type preference. So it gives us a little bit of a snapshot. This is the kind of information that will be useful to us if we're looking at a school within a school or a magnet or some type of special programming in order to get an idea of what is of interest to our students. So this is just informational about our last class. And maybe Joanne can confirm it. I know the school counselors administer the survey. Is it all 11th graders or all 10th and 11th graders? It's some portion of the Torrington High School population as part of the developmental guidance program related to college and career planning.
It's usually every 10th grader.
Every 10th grader
participates.
All right, thank you.
An update just on transportation. I think we're very fortunate to have All-Star be our transportation service because they shared with us their recent review of all their fleet, the buses that transport our children across Torrington every day for the next 10 or 11 months. And they own 70 vehicles, and all 70 vehicles were inspected from stem to stern, and there were absolutely no defects, and 0% failed. So I think that's pretty good to know that the transportation we are providing to our children to get to school is quite safe and in good shape. And plus, when I met with them, they also informed me that their drivers, over 50% of their drivers have been driving for them past the 10-year mark. And so, you know, it means that they're committed, they enjoy their employment, they stay with it, which I think is critical. They know the children, they know their roots, and that, again, is very important especially for our youngest children in coming to school. So I just wanted to share that if anybody asks, and, you know, and complaints. We really, I mean, I could count my hand, I think, how many calls actually came to the central office last year about the buses. I mean, it's a little hectic when we first start out, but, you know, we might go past a stop or something, but generally, parents are pretty well satisfied with our transportation program. And the other piece is that 5 cameras were installed on 5 buses. This is part of, was brought to our attention by the mayor and in collaboration with the police department, because even though bus drivers are putting their caution lights on and then their red blinking lights, people still pass. And so what this will do is it will take a picture of their license plate as they go back, as they go by. It will then automatically be reviewed by the police station, and if the police feel that a ticket should be sent, a ticket will be sent, and payment will be made. But more important than that is that it's greater safety for our children, because, you know, the yellow lights are going, the gate's going down, and children are not, at least our youngest children, are not supposed to cross until they get the nod from the bus driver. And, you know, if somebody's impatient, needs to get to work, they may go flying by. We just don't want that to happen to our children. May I ask Sue?
And the next item in your packet, if you turn 2 pages past, you'll see the original letter that was received by Principal Creedon from the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, known as NEASC. The cover memo just indicates that there were 13 commendations in terms of progress made in the 5 years since we had a visiting committee visit the high school for its accreditation. And there were 3 areas that they identified that they want school administration to continue to work on in the upcoming year. Those were in the areas of rubrics and grading, authentic learning experiences, and technology. And for each of those 3 recommendation areas that were identified in the original letter, giving you a brief bullet of the actions that are already planned to address those, so that we can positively report back to the committee in May that progress is being made in those 3 areas. 13 commendations is
Yeah, it's a very positive report for Torrington High School, so congratulations, Joanne. Since we've been working with NextGen to replace and repair the chillers and replace a more efficient use of lighting at the middle school, we've been approached by many other alternative energy resources. I know at the last school improvement committee, we had one on solar panels. The mayor has sent over a company, ECG, to take a look at all our electrical savings. And right now there are incentives through the state to you know, go with companies to look at alternative energy, whether it's wind, whether it's fuel cell, whether it's solar, thank you. And ironically, or not, but back in April I had a conversation with Mr. Bissett, our facilities manager, and I asked him to please start researching different types of alternate energy that we could implement to save, you know, on our utilities bills for the schools, because that is one of our highest expenditures up there with transportation and teacher salaries and benefits. So he started this back in April, and the other piece was that he reminded me that come December, we have to decide who we will be working with to purchase our utilities this year. We're coming off of a 3-year contract, and it was with a consortium, and whether we're going to stay with that consortium or go with another consortium or another company. So he said first and foremost, that is the first thing that we have to decide, because what happens if we make a commitment to a group or to CLMP or to whatever company, and then we look to these other companies to reduce the cost for our utilities, the money we're saving, we could be penalized. So, because you make a contract and you're gonna pay so much, per,
For certain threshold.
Yeah.
Energy use.
and,
Oh, okay.
and if you don't hit it,
And your
Yeah,
per
you
unit
know,
price
right.
goes up.
The more efficient we become,
Yeah.
the
Well, we could.
It's like purchasing fuel. You commit to
Yes.
buying X number of kilowatt hours, so you get a discounted rate. If you don't use that amount of kilowatt hours, you just get billed at a higher rate, which is a penalty. If you break the contract, there's a dollar cost to break the contract. Our 3-year contract that we're into ends in January. In talking to Dave and Cheryl, the problem that we have is any alternative energy that we look into is 18 months away. By the time they design it, install it, and get it up and running, we're looking at 12 to 18 months. So unfortunately, we have to address our immediate need of who our energy provider is going to be. We have to negotiate that contract, which leaves us the option to go with an alternative energy, try to get a 1-year contract possibly instead of a 3. So it allows us that out 18 months from now when we've decided that we want to go with some alternative or not, depending on which way we go. So
we have to look at our facilities, because we'd like with something with solar, do we put them on a roof? Which roofs are best to do it? Can we do a solar farm, in an open field? Yep, or wall mounted, I mean, and right now, everybody's pushing hard and fast because there is money with the state. And I think before, we have to look at the investment on return, and we also have to look at the commitment that the companies are expecting, us to do, kind of like buying a home.
we had that presentation on solar panels the other day. This may be an interesting area. I know we don't like to spend money on consultants of any nature, and I'm not one who wants to pay any money. But with all the different options, all the different technology that just continues to develop and become available, it won't almost be to our advantage to get someone who has some expertise in all of the available.
the next gen company that we're working with up at the middle school is a design build company. When they bid the middle school project, they bid the lighting and the cooling upgrades. They subcontract all of it out, but they came with the concept of how to get us a better chiller system to increase efficiency, reduce costs, reduce the footprint, and then the lighting end of it, they brought to us, which allowed us to get kickbacks or a refund from the power company for our efficiency use that helped fund the project for the chiller. So that's one of the groups we have looking at it, and I believe he has 2 other groups that are similar companies. The one that the mayor had do the city buildings, that also looked at our buildings, is the same thing. They're not a solar panel installer. They recommended wind use at one of the buildings, solar at some of the buildings. Dan brought to the attention when we were discussing this the other day of fuel cell technology, because we've been looking for standby generation at this building. If we went with a fuel cell, and this is an emergency shelter, the fuel cell would produce hot water, heat, and energy if the power goes out. So you would actually make this fallout shelter or emergency shelter that much more usable, because without electricity, you'd still get your hot water, you'd still get some, not the whole building, but you could do a certain area. So instead of coming forward with that solar presentation, part of the thought process is exactly what you're saying, is we need to wrap our mind around this on a little more global scale.
Or integrate the whole.
And look at, maybe it's not one solution, maybe it's not solar, maybe it's not wind, maybe we need, a conglomerate of all of it to be where we should be. So we're kind of we didn't want to bring it forward. I know there was some enthusiasm because there was a deadline put in front of us of a refund, but that goes along with the whole mandate discussion we just had. There's no sense jumping in if in the long run it's going to hurt us. So let's take the time, take a look at it. And next gen, I know at least 2 of the companies are consulting companies that are looking at it from a multi-use instead of just a single-use application.
And I think too is the return on the investment, how many years before we get payback for what we're doing, and that's critical. Because as you said, the technology can change rapidly.
Yes.
obviously I was very enthused about the presentation that we had, but I think it's important that we keep in mind the deadlines that we had. The ZREC funding that was made available through this company, the deadline was September 1st, is September 1st, so obviously we're not going to be able to move on that. Hopefully they're able to renew the ZREC bids, which is what makes it so that you talk about a rate of how long it takes to get, earn your money back. The presentation that was presented to us was zero money, and they guarantee over half of what we're paying for electricity. Maybe there's other companies that are better, but I mean, the presentation that was presented to us, that's how it was described. So,
But they couldn't provide full power. They couldn't fulfill our full energy need. They only met a portion of our energy need. So what ends up happening with that is we have to now go out and purchase the rest of our energy without having the benefit of buying in bulk. So what David had to look at was, okay, if we're buying, I'm just going to pick a number, 1 million megawatts of energy or kilowatts of energy, if they're only providing us with 600,000 kilowatts, but we need 1 million, then now we're only buying 400 instead of 1 million, we're going to pay $1 instead of 50 cents. So that's what he started to put together, but unfortunately what happened is, we had already had Next Gen, and the city had already contracted with ECG to do exactly that. So we have two consultant companies that are at no cost to us doing an energy audit and analysis on the whole property, to just grab one in the middle before we gave everybody the chance to finish kind of.
well, I mean, without having to go back and forth on this, but the company guaranteed 6 cents. You don't pay a penny over that, even if you end up using more electricity. That's what they guarantee. So, I mean, that was the presentation that they presented. Obviously, there's going to be a long contract that goes along with it, but they guaranteed 6 cents per kilowatt hour throughout the year, and you may end up getting a check back from CLMP at the end of the year for whatever you've saved through the summer. I mean, all I'm saying, obviously, we're not going to move on this before September 1st, but I just don't want to be, dragging our feet and end up, okay, we've missed another deadline. So I just think it's important to keep in mind, important deadlines. Obviously, the January deadline's an important one. If we're going to renew for another 3 years,
Yeah, that's we
So-
need that, or
Right.
lights go off.
Is there any way the consultant firms, based on Ben's concern, to try to potentially get this resolved before the 1st? Can you talk to them and say, by the way, we have this offer here, need to act on September 1st. Can you look at that within the next week so as to tell us whether or not maybe we should move up our urgency to actually do this, or they may say, don't worry about it. I don't know. I'm just saying, I understand, Ben, and that was a great presentation, and the numbers made a lot of sense for a long period of time. I understand what you're saying.
You're talking a 20-year contract.
20 years. 20-year contract.
We signed a 3-year contract with the consortium we're with, and within 9 months, we were trying to break it. We were, because we were able to get better deals within 9 months with a 3-year contract. So before you commit to 20 years, I know it sounds like a good deal, but 20 years, that's a huge commitment to put this district into without at least allowing. We really can't act on a sole bid anyway.
Right.
So it would be a sole source coming to us. We sign a 20-year deal. You can't do it. It's too much money. We have to have multiple bids, and to ask a company to do a complete energy audit and design a solar field in 11 days.
Okay.
I don't know if you'll get anybody to do that. I'm not sure. We can have Dave call them. We'll have them ask if they can do something, but I wouldn't hold my breath.
I mean, maybe they'll just tell us that don't worry about that cutoff. If it's a good deal, it'll still be there in another month or two.
It's been extended pretty religiously for the last
Things
many
are more
years.
competitive, they're not.
Right. Yeah, that rebate plan has been extended for many years. Okay, certified staffing update.
Okay, I wanted to give the board an update as to where we are. It's very fluid as we're going through the summer here. The most important thing we do is make sure we have good teachers in every classroom at the start of the school year. And as we move closer, our vacancies are filling in. Took a snapshot on August 8th. We were needing 35 vacancies to be filled. I wanted to give the board an idea of where these vacancies come from. 9 of them are new positions, 15 are resignations. We had 4 retirements requiring backfills. There were others, but we transferred staff to fill those where we could. We had 1 leave. I'm very happy to say that we did not require any layoffs of certified staff to meet our staffing needs this year. As far as the new positions, these are all positions that were budgeted for with one exception. We've been monitoring the e-school kindergarten all summer long, and those classes grew to almost 24, 25 a class. Worked with Sue Ferguson and the superintendent and decided that we needed to add a half a teacher there. We'll have to mitigate that into the budget and make that happen, because kindergarten really is an unknown. We do a good job planning, beating the bushes, going out there, surveying, but sometimes the number doesn't come out to be exactly what we project, and this was a case where we had to do that. Also wanted to point out that the board did ask us to add an assistant principal position at the high school. Happy to say that we had 65 applications come in. We've screened those, we've narrowed them down. Superintendent is seeing some of those finalists and going through and working together with Joanne and her committee to find the right person for the high school. So that's very much in progress. At the time I wrote this, we were looking, we had 25 of the 35 vacancies filled. At this point in time, we have all but 4 filled. The 4 happen to be 2 of which are little pieces of people. We need a .4 music teacher and we need a .4 science teacher. A little difficult to find part-timers, but we do have candidates working to get those done. And the other 2 are certification issues, people coming in from other states. We had some very difficult positions to fill this year, science related, world language related, special ed related, that there aren't an abundance of candidates compared to, say, a elementary teacher. Some of those are a bit difficult to fill, but we're getting those done. I thought it was interesting. I did want to point out where the fact that we did have a number of resignations. I thought the board might be interested. On the second page, kind of broke out for you during my exit interviews why those people decided to move on. 4 of them confided in me that they got an offer from another district, maybe one closer to their home, less of a commute, in 1 or 2 cases a bit more money, so that does motivate people to move at times. We did have 2 certified staff members that moved out of the area, out of state, and had to resign reluctantly. We had 2, unfortunately, had medical issues and needed to resign. And then the 7 is a little unusual. As you recall, we had a number of non-renewals that came before the board this spring. So I look back at other years. It's not unusual to get that kind of movement. In most of those areas, the exception was the non-renewals this year, as you recall. So as of August 14th, we have 31 of the 35 vacant positions filled. Fully confident that we will have all of them filled by the first day of school, hopefully well before. Got meetings tomorrow to finish up some of these. And at your seats, we did have a change, not so much in line with this, in our athletic director. And I did leave a press release for the board to review discussing that change at the high school. It's a very visible position, one that the community looks to run our athletic programs, and I thought it would be important to let the board know and the community know that there will be a change in that position.
Yes, Andrew.
So on the resignations, you're looking at approximately a 4%?
Yeah.
And that's pretty much in line year to year.
It's close. A few more this year, Andrew, because of those non-renewals, but I look back going 3 years and the numbers were very similar.
Yeah, I think it sounds positive.
Yeah. Now, we're retaining people, we're losing people, but it's gonna happen.
Right.
I just wanted to mention too, you'll see at the end of your packet in September, I'm sorry, we will do a report, much more thorough by school. We'll include transfers, work with Danielle to rectify the salary budget, this to see where we come out in terms of our projections. So you get a much more comprehensive report at the September meeting once everything is said and done. Sorry, Jim.
No problem. Before we get into the next couple of topics, can I get a motion to extend the meeting to 10:30? So moved by Mr. Devon, second by